In your book Trans, you talk of institutional capture by trans activists funded by billionaires. What institutions are being typically captured by this ideology? And what sort of billionaires? Why are they interested in this and who are they?
Yeah, so the billionaires is a small bit of it, really. The institutional capture is the term whereby an institution gets over time taken away from its original mission or purpose
Yep.
and shifted around, and it's very common. So in particular, there's a particular type called producer capture, which is when, for example, you set up a regulator for an industry, say the telecoms industry or something like that. And of course, the people that fund them will be the telecoms companies, and the people they talk to are the telecoms companies. And over time, the regulator gets captured by them and starts to be not much of a regulator anymore. It becomes a lobby group. So that's a really common one, like just, regulator to lobby is a well-worn pathway. I think this one started with the big and impressive lobby groups that grew up, or activist groups that grew up out of previous civil rights movements, in particular the gay liberation and black liberation movements, and to some extent women's suffrage. So, tiny, gutsy activists with no money set up groups that then became the ACLU or the National Organisation for Women, or the Human Rights Campaign, or what used to be called the Gay and Lesbian Alliance Against Defamation, or Stonewall here in the UK. And they were immensely impressive institutions that achieved their aim. There's still racism, yes, there's still sexism, there's still homophobia, but they achieved their aims. And then those organisations had no reason to exist anymore. So they got kind of co-opted and subverted to do something new. I think this is called the St. George syndrome, like when St. George has run out of dragons to slay, what does he do next? And for tiny amounts of money, like Stonewall got a small grant, I think of the order of, sorry, that's our main gay rights organisation that's now exclusively a trans rights organisation. It got a small grant from an American foundation called the Arcus Foundation of about 100k in 2015 on condition that it added transgender to its list of campaigning goals. And now, less than a decade later, that's all it does. So that's an example. And you asked about billionaires. I mean, there are some very big international foundations and funders, not all of them from one billionaire, but some of them, yes, Gates, Soros being two examples of big billionaires. I don't think either of those people wants to sterilise kids at all. But I think they have very large foundations that make a lot of grants and that are staffed by young activists who went into them in order to do what they regard as social justice activism. And the fact is that it's fashionable among young people to think that the right of people to identify as the opposite sex is a human right and is in fact an extremely important human right. And so, it is just a matter of record that the Open Society Foundations have given fairly significant money to organisations that have done things like write model laws for gender self-ID, which include children, that say that children of any age should be allowed to change their legal sex without parental input. And then they try, the smaller organisations that they give money to, then go and peddle those laws around dozens and dozens of countries. That's how my own country, Ireland, I'm actually Irish, although I live in the UK, how it got gender self-ID in 2015. There were about 50 countries in the Council of Europe where activists were kind of selling them these model laws, and Ireland jumped. And then suddenly we went from having no possibility of legal sex change to it being just something that you fill in a form online and they'll send you back a new birth cert. So that's institutional capture. And why did it happen? Well, as I said, there are people who really want it to happen. But more than that, we just have this enormous, now somewhat outsized machinery of NGOs and charities campaigning that we inherited from the three big liberation movements, women, black people, gay people. And they don't have the same legislative goals as they used to. All the legislative goals, we've got gay marriage, we've got women the vote. There's no legalised difference between the races in America, especially anymore. So they have to do something. St. George needs a new dragon to slay. This is what they're doing. And why this? Some people want it, but also it's fashionable. And kids have been indoctrinated on it for now 10 to 20 years in schools and online.